Welcome folks, back to the Thermoquad carburetor again. Today I was going to be talking a little bit about how to set your idle mixture and idle speed on these things. For starters, safety. Make sure that whenever you do any of these adjustments that you have your car emergency brake, parking brake on. Chock the wheels with bricks, big pieces of lumber, whatever you have, because you don't want this thing to run you over. It's safety first kind of a thing. Okay, now that we got the safety thing all considered, don't want to get hurt on this one, we'll proceed with the idle mixture as far as the way I've encountered in the past. There's no one specific way to set idle, unless of course you're dealing with the emission folks, smog test, so to speak. A lot of guys, they use a vacuum gauge, and they'll turn each of the adjusting screws in or out until they get the highest vacuum reading. And before we proceed any further, I should really show you what to look for as far as any damage to these things goes. What I'll do is I'll take one out and give you the lowdown on just what to look for in these things for any damage or wear. I'll just take the one out and give you an idea, clean it off a little bit. Got a piece of cardboard here for a little bit of a background to show you. I'll take the spring off of here like so. That's where it mounts. On the end here, basically all it is a bit of a taper, a V-shape if you will. What you're looking for here is any rough spots or anything that looks worn, like a groove worn in from turning. A good needle, it's okay to have a shiny spot on it, but you don't want any grooves or anything in it. It could affect the way your idle set is. If you're having trouble setting idle, that could very well be that it could be damaged to this, if there is such that you can see. Or inside the hole where it screws in, there's the hole that leads into the primary throttle bore. You pretty much in most of them look right through, and actually from the other side you can in some cases see the needle sticking part way into the primary throttle bore. So make sure everything is clean. I did have one time I was driving a car, and all of a sudden it wouldn't idle. I had to have one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake at the red light. And all it turned out to be, I actually got it home, and all I did was take the needles out and got a piece of neoprene tubing and just used the old mouth pressure and blew it right out of there. There was a piece of crud got through there somehow. It could have been like gas when it evaporates isn't the cleanest thing. It's almost like a varnish and stuff. Could be a piece of that got through, or maybe the filter missed something, but just blew them clean and reset the mixture screws, and it was good to go. Idle was perfect. No more 2-foot action at the red light. Okay, so now that you know what's going on here and what to look for, we can get on with the rest of this now. Thing that you have to watch with these, maybe before I forget, is once you do your idle setting for the mixture screws and the whole thing, is to make sure that both sides are balanced. If you have one that's say causing the engine to rev up a little higher than the other, a lot of times the performance can be affected. You get a funny kind of an idle, or it just won't perform very well. So it's very important to make sure they're both adjusted equally as far as the way they run. Not necessarily mean one needle could be out a bit more than the other if that's what it demands on one side. So basically what you have, so to speak, is two carburetors in one. This is basically taking care of one side, and this is taking care of the other side. If you have a single throat carburetor, you'll only have one mixture screw and maybe one idle setting on it. Okay, now away we go. First off, you want to be careful with these things. You don't want to treat them like you're throwing around your weight set at home. Very gently on these things. What you do for starters, well actually, even before we go that far, if you were going to do something like this with the carb already on the car, make sure the car is all fully warmed up first, and that saves you a lot of grief, a lot of waiting. So have your engine hot. Make sure that your choke is all the way off. In the case of these, this will be all the way down to the bottom of the cam step on here. Make sure your choke is fully off. The plate, you look straight down there, it should be a nice big hole in there for you. So make sure the choke is off, fully warmed up. And then what you would do is say the idle is already idling at what you want it to be at. I've done mostly standard transmission, so maybe I'll go with that. if you're looking for just an average set, you're not having to worry about smog tests, emission tests, what have you, then you can just basically seat these down. And just to get it started, you seat them lightly. You don't really want to crank them in there. You do damage to them if you do. You just start with that. I'm not using a script here. I'm just going off the old noggin. So a good place to start, like a lot of people will just go ahead and do that. All the carbs you see just have a screwdriver slot for the most part. You get lost in tracks. They don't even line up. This is just lightly seated. This one's almost 2 o'clock. This one's doing the 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock thing. So what best thing to do is get a piece of chalk, or if you want a more permanent kind of a thing, then you can paint it on with some enamel. Just put a mark. I usually point it upwards. There's a nice reference point. You can actually, if you're showing your car or whatever, you can also just rub the chalk off if that's what you want to do. You don't want your paint showing, but paint's a good way in case you come back to something later. You have a reference point. And also write down everything that you do to change any settings or anything. Keep track and put the date down, and you can go back and tell what you've done in the past. Okay, with that done, just to get one of these going, instructions may tell you certain things, but for most of these, unless it's a lean burn carb or whatever, just 3 turns out. So just go like this. 1, 2, 3. Same on this side. 1, 2, 3. Now if you didn't have any marking on there, you'd be going like half 1, half 2, half 3, but this is a visual, just like looking at your gas stove or whatever in your kitchen. You imagine if you just had a slot on your dial, you'd never know where the thing was at. So a good little simple marking would fix that. So start it with 3. Mind you, your engine's off at this point whenever you're doing any of this work. It's already warmed up, chokes off. So what you do is you can do it by ear. Say if you didn't have a handheld tach or any kind of a tachometer or a vacuum gauge, you can do it by ear. It's not the best way, but it'll get you in the ballpark. Is basically start screwing it in. You'll probably end up around the 2 mark, so you just gently screw them in. You can either do one side at a time, or you can do both sides a little bit at a time. But you'll get to a point where it'll go to its fastest. Right, so you're starting to go faster and faster. You want to try to keep the curb idle setting screw here. Say if it's going way up higher, about 1,000 RPM. What you want to do then, you can do the same thing with these, even for your curb idle. You can put a mark. I'll put it down on this one so you can see it in the video, just as a reference point. Same thing with the fast idle cam. If you ever want to get it back, or you're making some adjustments, a little dab of paint would actually be better. It would stay on there for you. But you put a little marking on there like so. So say it's up to 1,000. Well, you got to get it down to where you want to, find. Let's see, we got to find a speed to go for. We'll say 700. You're in neutral with an automatic or park. Park is better. So you just crank this back until you got it down to, say, 700. So 700 is the range you're trying to find the fastest idle speed at. So you just keep cranking it in slowly. And then when it actually drops down, then what you want to do is bring it back up just slightly until you get the actual fastest. You can do it by ear too. The fastest speed there, and the same thing here. The fastest speed, mind you, it might vary from the 700 you're originally trying for. But you get them both going at their very fastest. That will do probably your average setting for the old school way of setting things if you're doing it by ear. Then you can just adjust. Once you get this going as fast as you can and balanced equally amongst the 2 of them, then you can just go ahead and you can set your curb idle speed wherever you like it. That'll basically do a sort of a shade tree kind of thing with no instrumentation. Now if you were using a vacuum gauge, naturally you just keep screwing them in or out until you get the highest vacuum reading that the manifold vacuum will give you. That's that one setting. And then you just set your curb idle. If it's in drive, make sure, like I say, the parking brake is on. You've got it, you're in there and you put it in gear and everything, and just watch your speed. A helper is good in case you actually have him stand on the brake as long as he's not really pumping him or anything and taking vacuum away from your carb. So just basically adjust this until you get to speed. Say if it was, say for instance, say it was 500 in drive, engine hot, choke off. Once these are set to the maximum vacuum value, say you're getting 17 inches of vacuum out of it, just for a ballpark figure, then you would just adjust your idle speed in drive. Say it called out for 500, you would just adjust the curb idle speed to 500. This is the basic kind. The other kinds would have an electric solenoid here you would adjust, and this would actually be back down probably a turn, so that when you shut the engine off, it would keep it from dieseling, like running on, and this solenoid would kick off and let it drop to this lower setting. But I'm not sure whether this one actually came with one or not. I never got it when I bought it, but I've actually done it without the solenoid too, just with using this one curb idle screw. That's that way. Now if you were going to do, say, going through a smog test like I've done in the past, it was a standard transmission, mind you. They called for what they call a lean drop setting. So what you would do is get this basically going the same thing. And a lean drop, what it is a drop in RPM just with the mixture screws. So say it was a lean drop from 900 RPM. You're neutral, it's a standard transmission, brakes on, safety stuff all considered. You would set it for 900 RPM on a tachometer. No need for a vacuum gauge, I've done it without it, just with the tach. Set it curb idle screw for 900 RPM. Then what you do is adjust these in equally. Well, not at this point, but you get it right, it's going as fast as you can with the mixture. And you try to keep it in the 900 range, and once you get them going fast as you can and balanced, then you adjust this to the 900 RPM again. It'll probably drop or increase depending on what's happening with the engine. And then once everything is as fast and lean as you can get it here, going as fast on the two mixture screws and balanced, you set this again for 900 RPM, and then it will say drop it to 800 RPM, say. So you just turn these equally in until you drop to 800 RPM in neutral. So there we go. Now I'm hitting 800 RPM on the tachometer. So that's the setting right there, and then if it called for a curb idle speed of something different, you could readjust just the curb idle screw, or if in the case of a solenoid that's over here, you could do it with that. So I hope that helps you in some way see what's actually going on with idle mixture screws. Another thing too, with the lean drop, I'm figuring you probably get better gas mileage, because at a red light you're sitting there doing nothing, getting 0 miles per gallon. So the leaner you have it here, the more you're going to save on gas. One other consideration is in a performance view, and you're not worried about the smog test, you can actually richen these up a little bit, even from what I said about the vacuum gauge and that, and it would help initiate a richer mixture for full throttle application. So there's several ways you can do this. Like I say, if you got a smog test, then you got to go in accordance with them. If you can get hold of a CO meter or a carbon monoxide meter that would take a reading from the tailpipe, then you can adjust them with this. Or if you got a real highfalutin shop that's got the technology and the equipment for testing when they do an emissions thing, you can pay them a few bucks and have them adjust it for you. But there's, like I say, there's no real one way to adjust the carburetor. It depends on what the operating parameters that you want on it, and whether you got emissions testing to consider. Some of the older cars, they're exempt from it. Depends on your state, your country, your province, what have you. So that's about all I got to say for today on the mixture screw and idle setting. I hope that helps you out, and take care. Have a nice day.